lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we are back with our first double feature of the new year, covering the YouTuber-made box office sensation Iron Lung and Sam Raimi's return to theaters with the island survival thriller, Send Help. So if you only want to stick around for part of our discussion, one film and not the other, be sure to use the podcast chapters to navigate the flow of the show. So first up is Iron Lung, which was released January 30th, 2026, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, usually going into the episode, I know somewhat, just discussing behind the scenes, if this is something that you were anticipating, if this was something that you were familiar with, but with this one, I'm genuinely in the dark on it. So were you familiar with the video game that this movie is based on? Are you maybe a big fan of Markiplier himself? Let us know. Were you looking forward to Iron Lung?
So it's pretty much like no on all accounts. I had no idea. Well, this is a lie. So we never ended up doing what we were looking forward to in 2026, just because
exactly
we pretty much this year started just right off the bat with a bunch of stuff.
I was late, finishing work this year. I never finished till December 22nd, so it was kind of like we had to choose one episode or the other. And, you already were doing some homework for the things we missed, so we kind of leaned that way with the late to the slaughter episode.
So I did, when I originally thought I was going to have to do some homework on that episode, like I had seen this was coming out. I had no idea what it was. I've never heard of the video game. I've never heard of the YouTuber guy. I didn't even know it was a YouTuber guy until you told me. I did know it was a game because a buddy of mine that now lives in Scotland, but used to live here, and we used to, my movie bud, he's a huge game. He might put you to shame as a gamer. Like, he's like 18 hours a day, just grinding 7 days a week.
Does he have a specific game that he plays? Do you know offhand?
I don't.
Is he like a Counter-Strike guy? Is he a League of Legends guy? Like
he's like one of these guys. Like, he's really into like independent games and like plays everything. Cool. I know he was really big on like Death Stranding for a while.
All right, that one's less indie, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
He's like one of these, like Warhammer type guys, like all that kind of thing. So I'm sure this is right. I mean, I'm sure he's listening to this now, and he's just like, Jesus Christ,
big smile on his face.
Yeah. So I remember him briefly being like, "Hey, are you going to see this movie? Like, it's based on this game." And at the time, you hadn't told me to go see this movie, so I was like, I have no idea what that is really. And then you said, Rowan, go see it. And amazingly, my little town theater that didn't have this movie on Friday just randomly brought it in on Saturday and added like 6 playing times for it every day.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're rocking and rolling. What about you? I'm sure you were a little more familiar than me.
Yeah, Iron Lung's one of those games that I think it came out, it wasn't during the pandemic because I think it was 2022, but for whatever reason, it was kind of one of those games that blew up just with YouTubers doing different videos on it. So at some point, I watched somebody do a playthrough of it, or at least a partial playthrough, and I think he wound up crashing the submersible halfway through, and he was just kind of like, well, it was a good game, but that's it, So I was definitely familiar with it, and I like the core conceit of kind of taking photos at the bottom of this ocean and seeing the skeletons or what creatures were there. It was very cosmic horror, had a really good vibe about it with a lot of the audio design, and it's just like one of those small-scale indie games made by a solo developer, and I admire a lot of people that are actually able to do that themselves and then make something that's impressive as a video game, but then also successful, on the marketplace, because, there's thousands of these little games that come out a month, right? Like it's independent development for video games is, so in vogue right now, especially for the past 10 years. So yeah, I was familiar with Iron Lung. Now, Markiplier as a creator, he was never the sort of person I ever watched, but my brother, who's a couple years younger than me, and he's an aspiring game dev developer himself. Like, that's what he's went to school for. He used to watch kind of Markiplier and all these sorts of YouTubers growing up, like PewDiePie and Jacksepticeye and all these guys that it's like people that are probably a little bit younger than myself, or, you know, a little bit younger than you as well, obviously. They're probably familiar with these guys if you were used to watching people kind of play horror games on YouTube and usually shout at them a bunch. So I knew Markiplier from popping up in different videos every now and then with, you know, collaborating with other creators, but he was never really somebody that I really gravitated towards. So with Iron Lung, I heard that he acquired the rights for it. I think he had a YouTube series that was, you know, did well for him, but it was also, I think he was genuinely interested in the material. And it was the sort of thing where it was like Chris Stuckman, you know, his movie a couple months ago, Shelby Oaks, where this was on my radar for the past couple of years, just kind of tracking to see if it was ever going to be made. And, you know, basically it kind of just snuck up on me that I think it was similar to what you were saying when we were looking ahead at what was releasing this year. I was like, oh my God, Iron Lung's actually coming out. And I was like, no way it's going to be in any theaters around here. This is like a straight to, you know, Tubi release or something, you know, it's just going to be on VOD, and, you know, that's how he'll make his money back, essentially. Little did I know that Markiplier had such an impressive distribution plan for this. Listen, we're going to get into the movie in a couple of minutes, but I don't know if I've seen really a movie of this scale, you know, at this budget level, by someone who is not part of the Hollywood system at all, get a movie released on like 2,000 screens, probably even more than that, like all across North America. It's pretty insane. I genuinely didn't think that I was going to be able to see this at theaters. You already mentioned that, you know, it was at your little theater nearby. You didn't even have to drive to the bigger city like an hour away. And it seems like everything that I can see, we're recording this, you know, Sunday evening, that it's doing incredibly well at the box office as well. So I wonder if this is going to actually be a little bit of a shake-up for distribution going forward. If smaller films, if you're willing to put a little bit of money behind it, or if you're willing to have, you know, enough of a grassroots marketing campaign where people actually call the theaters and kind of, you know, harass them a little bit about getting a movie, if this will actually be a little bit more common going forward. Because as someone who's worked on a number of independent films at around this budget level or slightly even less, I mean, you're lucky to get it in like 10 theaters across Canada, right? Like, and like, you are lucky, and it's doing like a 1 week, you know, engagement. So yeah, was I looking forward to Iron Lung? A little bit based off the video game, but just, I was very impressed the past couple of weeks, just seeing how many theaters that this was actually playing in. So that's more so the impressive thing to me about this.
I was trying to quickly look up, but like, I think it's like pretty high in the box office this weekend.
Well, it is. I'm pretty sure when I was looking into it, it's contending with Send Help. I think it's number 2, but it's not far behind. It's like a couple $1 million. And this is a movie that was made for $3 million, you know,
it beat
probably
Melania,
largely.
so.
Yeah, thank God for that. Probably largely funded by Markiplier himself. I did see there was a couple of producer names there, like 3 or 4 of them. So, you know, it might not be a solo investor, but Markiplier is very much vested in this movie. And even if I'm not a fan of the guy's content, or maybe not even the fan of him as really an actor, you know, as we'll get into, I do admire somebody taking their YouTube wealth, investing it in a little indie horror game, and kind of bringing it to the big screen all across North America and, you know, eventually probably the rest of the world. You know, there is something admirable about that if you like independent filmmaking, if you like independent video games, that is sort of an inspiring story, I think. So should have Markiplier stuck to YouTube? Well, before we get into that, let's throw it on over to the trailer.
I see that question in your eyes. For what purpose do we remain alone in the dark?
Beginning the descent. Cruising depth in roughly 2 minutes. Stand by.
I ask myself that very same question.
I'm seeing some voltage irregularities on the instrument, so keep an eye out for sparks or flames or anything like that.
Why would there be flames? You did test this thing, right?
This is the test. Closing porthole shielding.
Where's the reason for this quiet rapture? Too few to rebuild, too many to feed.
You're the first one down. All we have are surface scans, that's why you're there. reasons.
Can we just agree this is important? Food, air. We need this, not just the COI, all of us. We need this.
There aren't enough of us left to be throwing lives away, but there is too much at stake not to take calculated risks. Eden doesn't understand that. You don't understand that.
I just want to live. Is that so wrong? Why doesn't anybody else want that?
Iron Lung was written and directed by Mark Fishbach, and the story is as follows. Set in the far-flung future following an event known as the Quiet Rapture, which caused all known stars and habitable planets in the universe to disappear, a convict is sent to search an ocean of blood on a desolate moon using a small submarine, nicknamed the Iron Lung. Now, here on Now Slang, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Iron Lung?
Well, first, I wish I just can't do it. I wish I could have a cool of a voice as Mr. Mark Fishbach. I was thinking while watching this, he literally has like generic action video game voice in this. I was like truly impressed. I was like, this literally sounds like I'm playing like Call of Duty or Doom or like literally anything where it's just some random guy supposed to be like badass.
It's just like a deep kind of, I don't know, bassy voice that whenever I've watched, and once again, you know, seen clips of him or watched a video he was featured in, it very much comes off to me like it's an announcer voice. You know how like you've gotten shit a couple of times that you have your podcast voice, and I actually do have a somewhat of a radio voice or podcast voice, especially if I'm the one who's like introing the show or trying to get the discussion set up. But if this is a fake voice or his real voice, I don't know, but it's definitely like a deep ASMR type voice or like an action hero sort of voice. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I really liked it, and you know, I thought he was okay. I'm questioning
I agree.
Your intro.
A bit of a mixed bag is what I'll say. He's fine for me as someone who's familiar with him. A little bit distracting at times. But, you know, he's not bad. You know, he wasn't, like, awful. Like, it was the sort of thing,
I thought
as you
for
watch
this
the movie...
type of thing, like, I was like, it's fine.
After 10 minutes, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I can believe you, I guess, as this character for, you know, the next 2 hours, you know?
Oh, listen, don't get me started. Don't get me started. So I was, like, leaving to go see this, and he was like, how long are you going to be? I'm like, oh, I'm sure that it's only, like, an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25 minutes. Yeah. And, I mean, we'll definitely get into it more in the spoiler section, but I feel like this movie probably could have shaved like 30 minutes off.
At least. Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What I will say is I'm going to highly suggest that if you are going to see this movie, like maybe like some sort of brief read up or something on this video game, because I will say as we continue to talk about this, we got pretty much to the end and I still had no fucking idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say that necessarily made me enjoy it less because for me, not having any reference to this game or although not knowing what the game's about, you can tell by the way this is made, like, okay, this game's obviously like a single room. Like there's these like 3 things you're going to interact with. Mm-hmm. So kind of like we talked about with Five Nights at Freddy's 2 when he's in the control room, I kind of thought it was a cool concept where I was like, okay, I would imagine they're sticking pretty close to gameplay here. But I felt for this is like a vibes movie to me. Like this is 100% vibes and they're tickling all the Rowan's pleasure centers just right on this one. We've got like cosmic horror going on and you know, as much as I always complain, I think the last thing we kind of talked about with this kind of thing is when we talked about Rabbit Trap, like just very vague. I don't know what's going on. It's like this mystery unraveling. I love that, even though sometimes it frustrates me. I still love it. I was like really, really interested when this started about like what's going on, especially because this is a like drop you in movie and you're kind of figuring it out.
Quite literally, it starts with, I'm pretty sure, the sub being dropped in.
Yeah.
You know?
So I was kind of all on board for this, and I knew it was lower budget. I didn't know what the budget was, but I will say, like, visual wise, I thought everything looked pretty good. Even when we get into like the real wild cosmic stuff, I didn't think anything was too like, oh, they reached a little too far for this, or like I thought everything looked pretty decent in this.
Okay.
It was cool seeing some people, like some voice acting of people I knew. So the only other thing I knew about this, because I follow like Alana Pierce, I followed her for like years, and she does
from the IGN days,
yeah,
or
like before then.
Oh, okay.
And then like I'm a big fan of like Raul Cooley, her partner is also a voice in this. You know, hopefully he's still very appreciative that when I saw him in the airport, I didn't like fan out and bug him. But I'm like a huge fan of his. I've been with him since like the iZombie days. That's my jam. So it was cool seeing people I knew involved in this, and that helped me, I think, kind of connect to it a little more. But I thought the story was really gripping. I thought visually this is like a fun single location kind of chamber piece, a puzzle putting it together. And then probably, you know, I mean, this is just typical me, but to me, I thought the score was absolutely incredible. I was a huge fan of this score. Andrew Holsholt is the composer, and it really shouldn't surprise me that I like this guy. He did the Doom Eternal score.
Ah, okay.
And he also has done the score for like Quake Champions game. And so he's a video game score guy. I just thought it was really strong because music-wise, those are like two very different things, like scoring a video game to scoring a film. And I just thought it really like helped me get involved in it. And holy blood.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about the scenes, but yeah, it's like I'm it's like I'm back in 2013, fucking Evil Dead days or something going on here. Like buckets of blood. I thought, honestly, man, other than the length, I thought this was a pretty good romp for me.
Wow.
Like I said, we're going to continue to talk. Do I know what the fuck's going on in this movie? Absolutely not. Even at the end of it, no idea. I had to literally like read and be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
There is some major issues, I think, with some of the mixing in this. I found things that we were definitely supposed to be hearing to let us know about the story was like totally being overpowered by sounds and stuff. Yeah. And for someone like me that isn't a fan of this game and doesn't know the game, like once I went back and looked, I'm like, oh, this was obviously information I probably should have known because I would have got the story more so than I did. But to me, if you're going into this for vibes and you don't know this game, I think you're going to have a good time. There's something about guys in spaceships by themselves, man. I kept thinking about Spaceman, Adam Sandler.
Oh, yeah. God, that came up yesterday at my my movie afternoon with my friend Grace. We wound up talking about Spaceman with Adam Sandler and Paul Dano. And I was just like, why is Spaceman coming up all the time? This is insane.
I was just like, yeah, I don't know what it is, man. Just brooding guys being depressed in ships by themselves. Just something about it I just love.
That might say something about you.
Yeah, it might. What about you, man? What are some of your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm surprised you've been going on for a minute about just very favorably about this movie. And what I will say is that this premise from the video game is pretty cool for a smaller scale, kind of single location indie movie. I thought it was very smart on Markiplier to kind of option this material and then produce it. I will say for me, I don't think I was fooled for a single moment the entire movie that this was like a big production or that it was never kind of a low budget thing. There was something for me kind of about the lighting for a lot of it, specifically in the latter half, that it always looked a little bit budget. But I will say that I wasn't bored and I wasn't distracted by a lot of that for at least like an hour and 10 minutes of this movie, which is pretty good. I mean, there's loads of movies like this that I'm checked out within 15 minutes, especially if it's just a dude in a room by himself, kind of, you know, hearing voices on the radio or hearing noises outside of the room, essentially, right? So I do think that's pretty impressive. The voices, I recognize some of the cast. It's funny that I didn't recognize Alana Pierce or Rahul Kohli because, I mean, I know both of them as well.
Yeah.
There was I think Jacksepticeye was in it at one point as a voice, or most notably Troy Baker, who is, you know, the voice of Joel from the original The Last of Us video games, right? That is just, for me, it's like, God, I just love that guy whenever I hear him in anything. He's one of those voice actors for video games, like a Nolan North, that he just pops up in everything, and he's just, he can do like any voice, and he does it masterfully whenever he does. So he's more so just doing his regular voice in this, but it's just, I love Troy Baker whenever he pops up in anything. But for me, as I was watching it, I can't really point out a lot of the things like you in terms of the score. Like, I didn't notice it, I guess, which is a bit strange, because I also didn't notice the score in Send Help that we'll be discussing later, and I've heard some people kind of remark on that as well. So I must have just been off in terms of keeping an ear out for that this afternoon when I was watching it. But yeah, overall, there's a point in this movie where the movie kind of states how much time is left in the movie. And when it did that, I kind of pulled out my phone and I took like a quick peek, and I was like, oh my God, there's actually still, 30, 40, 45 minutes, whatever it says, left in this movie. And from then on out, I was like, oh no, because it very much felt like at that point, we should have had 5 to 10 minutes left. It very much felt like a lot of the narrative that I cared about was wrapped up. Did I have similar gripes as you in terms of comprehending the story or like hearing people on the radio or that sort of thing? Not really until that portion of the movie. Like the third act of this movie that feels very protracted, very dragged out, was the area where essentially a lot of the technical aspects that I thought were at least serviceable, or at least were pretty impressive for its budget, started to kind of really let it down. I think for me, it's not like pointing to, let's say, a single visual effects or, a blood gag or, an audio moment to kind of let me down. It's more of like this cumulative effect of just everything, specifically leading towards the last 15 to 20 minutes, which I would say is basically incoherent as a movie. Just like, in audio, visual, every aspect of filmmaking for the last 15 to 20 minutes is pretty tough. I think most people, unless you have a very intimate knowledge of the game where you know all of the lore inside and out, I think you'll be pulling up Wikipedia basically right after you leave the theater, because I truly didn't know exactly what was happening there in the last 10 to 15 minutes. And I think I was also in one of those theaters that was a little bit darker. So there was even some things that I think I was supposed to see near the end that I couldn't really make out. And then once again, I didn't know if it was kind of keeping it dark for visual effects is, benefit, or if it was just the bulb on the projector was really low or what. So yeah, it was the sort of thing where I think it just went on too long. I truly would have enjoyed this, I think, if it was 70 minutes. But at 127 minutes, it's it becomes a little bit harder of a sit for me overall. But with that said, I mean, it could have been way worse. The fact that I was, roped in for 60, 70 minutes and very much being like, oh, this is pretty good, and most of what I had to say at that point was favorable, is pretty impressive, I think, overall.
To me, because I think he was trying to definitely follow the game, or at least what I've read after I've seen it.
The game is only like an hour long.
Yeah. And it's a lot of like repetitive task type stuff.
Exactly.
And 100%. Like, I feel like we did a lot of repetitive tasks in this where if some of those had been cut out, you could have shaved 20, 30 minutes off this, no problem. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, like, there's lots of similarities as we get into it in the spoiler section, but to me, like, if you're thinking about seeing this, like, I thought so much about Event Horizon watching this. Like, if you're into that kind of sci-fi space horror.
Yeah, I would say it's probably an influence for sure.
It's a double feature, definitely, if you're doing it.
Yeah, so you're talking about people going to the theater. My theater for this, I texted the group chat right before it started, and I was like, man, I'm seeing this Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, not a popular showtime. It was at least probably 2/3 full, and there was 2 to 3 rows in kind of the middle upper section that were completely sold out entirely with high school kids or young adults, basically Markiplier fans. And I texted the group chat and I said, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare screening for me. There's no way like these kids are going to shut up. And dude, it was one of the most respectful screenings I've been to in a long time. It was more respectful than my Send Help screening, a couple hours before. Absolutely. So I was shocked. This is a slow burn, one dude on camera, cosmic horror chamber piece, and you could hear like a pin drop in my theater most times outside of the mixing. I was very impressed. Now, as soon as the credits started to roll, somebody who's not a Markiplier fan yelled out, "That was so boring," and he was very angry. But outside of that, theater was super respectful. I was shocked.
I was very surprised. So I did today on a Sunday. I did also a 3:30 showing. And I mean, as I always say, right? Like I live in a pretty small town. So when I'm at a showing that there's 8 other people at, that's might as well be sold out in my town.
It's a big event.
Unless it's a kid's movie or some huge action
Marvel,
type
5 years ago
movie, those are the only things that people go to in my town. And so I went totally expecting, I got my tickets early, so I was like, all right, it's me and one other guy in this theater. And I think I counted 25, 30 people at the showing, just a random 3:30 showing. Also, like yours, very respectful. Everyone was dead silent watching this. And I'm a crowd watcher, especially now that we talk about movies for half of my life. So, I'm always looking at people as they're watching it. What are people, and people were glued to this. I knew, I was I'm not I'm not trying to be stereotypical. I'm just saying I knew these guys definitely played some Iron Lung. These were people that were brushing the dust off from the basement because they're just gaming all day. And they were transfixed on this. They
got their weekly shower to venture to the theaters to see Iron Lung.
There was a couple in the same row as me, and the guy was getting up, I don't know, to get a refill of pot, and his partner, she was not impressed that he was getting up during this movie. And she's like, you gotta hurry up. She's like, I was like, you tell him.
You're gonna miss Markiplier staring at a rusty wall.
Yeah, boy, you can't miss that, man. But yeah, I was very surprised, how, and I knew before I got into the theater, I was like, there's no way this isn't making money, because if this many people are seeing it in my tiny town, and they made it, like I said, they made it a note to bring it in already past when they've got the listings up, then obviously they're like, oh, wait a second, this movie is making money and there's a demand for it. So, and I looked there was tickets sold for tonight. I could go in the app and look, and I mean, just a fantastic audience. Yeah, and everybody stayed after while looking at the credits, and not a sound. Everyone was just staring at the screen, taking it in.
Oh, I left. I had to piss. I raced out of there. It said it was I don't know, written, directed, produced, edited, starring Markiplier. Literally his name in the movie, in the credits, was Markiplier, which was crazy to me. And I was like, boom, gone. Right after that guy, screamed, I left. That was it.
I figure either they were huge Iron Lung fans, or like me, they were just sitting there trying to figure out what the fuck happened. So
yeah,
it was one of the two.
They were waiting for the post-credit scene to explain it all. But yeah, so respectful audiences for both of us. Would you recommend people go out and check this one out in theaters?
I mean, I would. I thought it was pretty cool, and you were saying that you could tell the budget a little bit. I wasn't that obvious, and I mean, just something this indie, there's no way I can say don't go support it. And it's cool. The run time is long, I get that, all that, but overall, I think for like a directorial debut of, it's a video game, but you know what I mean? It's not like, you know, it's not a remake Friday the 13th or so. Like, it's a pretty original IP that you've never seen on the screen before. I think it's worth your time to check out, especially, like I said, if you're into that like Event Horizon, very cosmic, Lovecraftian horror, and you're willing to give it its runtime and maybe be confused like I am. I think the vibes are right on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. It's hard for me to say don't go to your theater and, you know, support a little indie movie that is, you know, shaking up the whole studio distribution system and, you know, based on an independent video game. Whether or not it stars Markiplier, which it does, or if you're a fan of Markiplier, I still think it's worth going to check this one out. And yeah, I'm just like very impressed that a little $3 million movie, which I understand to everybody, you know, that's not pocket change, but for, you know, making movies it is, and that it's doing so incredibly well. It kind of warms my heart a little bit. And I hope it actually does, you know, shake some things up going forward. And, you know, it's just a kind of another example of movies adapting video games and at least not making like Prince of Persia from back in 2007 or the Resident Evil movies or Blood Rain. Or, I don't know. There's so many bad video game adaptations that you can point to that, at least in my opinion, for a lot of this, I would not say it's bad. So,
No.
yeah, I would say it's worth checking out in theaters while you still can. And, you know, maybe prove it to your local theater that getting in little movies like this, you know, could be worth it for their bottom line. So it seems like both of us are recommending you can check this one out in theaters. And with that, I think it's time to cut to our spoiler discussion for Iron Lung. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Iron Lung, so if you've not seen Iron Lung, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, you kind of mentioned some buckets of blood, you mentioned some cosmic horror elements. Where do you want to start things in our spoiler-filled discussion?
I want to talk about like the premise of like taking the pictures. I thought this was really cool. Like I said, I didn't know anything about the game, but I thought, you know, one of the things I love in a horror movie is like, and this very much until the end, like until kind of the finale, the third act, this is very much a like, the horror is implied, but we don't really see anything. Like, you're in the sub, the shutters are closed, like, we're not looking out of the window in the front, and the only thing you have to relate to the sounds outside are this, like, radiation camera.
Yeah, and the beeping when you're too close to something,
Yeah.
you know, under the ocean, the blood ocean.
Exactly. And they take, you know, you get like this snapshot, but it's like black and white. It only lasts like 3 seconds and then fades away. And I just thought this was like such a cool device for horror because the pictures are grainy and shitty. It's suck.
A great little analog horror set piece. You know, it also works as lighting in the movie because this movie is very dark.
Very
but
dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staple of the game, and it's one of the game's strongest points, right? Like capturing those, the images underneath in the submersible, seeing the monster, seeing the skeleton, seeing if they move, you know, stuff like that. And with all the, you know, the soundscape that it's pacing, it is, you know, it's why the game was popular to begin with, and obviously that aspect of the movie works in the movie as well because it's a 1-to-1 complete adaptation of what they did.
Yeah, well, and I thought like because the pictures are so like grainy and black and white, like I loved the fact that like, especially towards the beginning, right? You're looking at these pictures and you're like, oh, that looks like a skeleton or whatever, but I'm not sure. I'm like, you know, they're on a moon in this like blood sea, who fucking knows? And
it could be literally anything.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes there's pictures that I thought looked like there was something in it, and then it's like, oh no, that's just like a wall or something, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm an idiot.
Yeah, and you know, similarly, there was pictures where it's like, oh, it turned its head to look at me, and I was like, wait, I didn't see that. Where was the turn of the head? You know, so I will say that the pictures are effective and they're creepy, and I obviously that's a part of the core conceit of the Iron Lung video game that I love in the movie as well. It was just, I don't know if it was always coherent in showing what it was supposed to, but at least you had the radio or Markiplier's, dialogue or something to convey that, okay, there was something, scary in that picture, even if you happen to miss it.
Yeah, like I said, I just thought that was a great kind of gimmick. It did very good setting up in the beginning, kind of like the rules. I thought this was one of the better kind of video gamey in a movie type thing where it's like, we understand everything's very simple. Like there's simple controls at the front. It's like this button opens and shuts the window, and you're told from the voice coming out of the speaker, the woman, that like, oh, you got to have the shutter shut at all times, and this is your direction and everything. Like I like how minimal everything was in this. And I really also liked the radio device as this connection to the story. And unfortunately, like I said, there were sometimes I think the mixing was a little off. So, because obviously as it goes on and he's losing grips with reality, like different voices are coming on the radio.
Yeah, we won't jump to the third act yet because there's still some other little things to point to. But, if there's a voice on the radio and then a voice that's almost like telepathic being transmitted through the ocean, and then there's also the score and the noise of everything happening inside, and then the camera is filmed so shakily, it's hard to realize what the fuck is going on. And there's a large section of that. I don't even know if it's purely the mixing. I think it's purely just there's too much going on. There's too much. And it just creates like this auditory hellscape, more or less. It's like my vocal track on the Return to Silent Hill episode last week.
Yeah, but like I said, I just, that really, it worked for me. And I just kept thinking about, I was like, this really is one of the better video game adaptations in terms of, I still felt like it was a video game and not just based on video game material. I was like, oh, this is
it's not like the submersible was loaded up with some rocket launchers and there was half a dozen of them down there and they were shooting the creatures and all this stuff. It was still very faithful to the soul and the idea and the core kind of tenets of the Iron Lung video game that I know at least. And I guess that's what you get when you probably have one key creative more or less in charge of everything. And, that probably used his own money to buy the rights for $50,000 off the guy or something,
Yeah, geez, I can only think about what he paid for the rights. I bet it was a steal, too. This guy was thinking.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, is there a scene you specifically want to talk about? Like, I don't want to, like, jump too far, or...
Yeah, I mean, for me, I did think the explanation of the basically the X-ray, the radiation as the camera was interesting. Like, how they convey that to us is a moment that I don't think it's from the games, from what I've seen, is where he's up above, and essentially there's a moment where he's talking to kind of the voices on the radios, and they're wiping the blood off the porthole, and he's talking back and forth, and there's a lot of, inconsistencies with that blood on the porthole, but that's okay, whatever, it's a little indie movie, we'll excuse it. But he irradiates all the people in the picture, and it's a pretty cool moment where you see all their skeletons and whatnot like that I was like, okay, this is a cool moment. I really like that. But yeah, specifically in terms of the rest of it, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot to say other than the movie is very vibes-based until you kind of get towards the latter half, where I think you almost get this fake-out ending where, Markiplier winds up in like an ocean of blood looking at this, I don't know, huge Lovecraftian monster that I couldn't even really make out exactly what it was, and once again, I don't know if that was because my screen was dark or because it was dark anyways. I saw like a red orb or maybe an eye, and then that was kind of it.
Yeah, I thought the monster design was pretty cool. Like, I thought in the ocean, I was like, this is a pretty like original looking like huge beast with the teeth type thing going on. I thought the eye actually looked pretty good. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty creepy.
Okay, damn. See, because I couldn't see the eye, I don't think. Like, when we were up above, it was very, like, don't get me wrong, like, obviously the ocean was a very deep shade of red. It was dark, but I couldn't really make out a lot of what was in that shot.
You know, as we said in the spoiler-free section too, like there's so much blood in this. The ship's always leaking blood. We you know, I love that we get the tease of that pretty much from the get-go. Like there's always little drips of blood dropping. Even what you were talking about, like when you're kind of getting your explanation of stuff and they're wiping the porthole window and stuff. I loved how, like, no matter how much they wiped it, like, blood kept coming down. And to me, it was interesting as it went on, too, because, like I said, I was thinking so much about Event Horizon and almost as a viewer, my mind going just like the Simon character, where I was like, oh, like, you know, they're wiping this blood and stuff, but I'm like, is the ship like a living thing? Like, you know, out of the pipes, even though I know they're in this blood ocean, it's like the pipes are bleeding blood. And like later on, as we get into the cosmic horror, like, you know, it's got like veins and like everything's kind of growing on this ship.
Yeah, it essentially becomes almost like an actual lung or an organ.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's basically this construction of gore and viscera by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and, you know, I loved kind of the moments where, you know, obviously Simon is, you know, is suffering from this isolation. So he's, like, seeing stuff and, you know, how this exists. This is why we keep saying this is a vibes movie, because there's a lot of stuff in this that I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, obviously he's isolated. He's like mentally breaking down, but then like he's seeing things that are leaving him like notes, and those notes exist and the wiring exists. But then I'm questioning myself. I'm like, maybe none of this exists. Like maybe this is just a total meltdown of his mental state.
Well, then the movie even goes like, or at least the way I interpret it, it goes like a layer further, where it almost seems like there's like a time slippage, or like some sort of like, once again, when he sees that like Lovecraftian cosmic horror god, you know, he returns, but there seems to be a lot of time that has passed, and he also sees a version, or he sees like another, or like a creature piloting the ship that it's, you know, he resembles that by the end of the movie. So once again, there's a bunch of stuff that, if you take the movie at face value, I mean, I guess there winds up being like parallel universe reality shifting elements to it, right? And time slippage and all this stuff. So it's like, well, was the note there from the beginning? Did he put the note in there for the next person that comes? You know, because the person who's kind of snooping around the back of the submarine resembles what he looks like near the end. There's a lot of stuff like that it's like, it's not explained. It's more so just little things to kind of poke at. And when you're watching the movie, it's kind of like, oh, something that's creating that unsettling atmosphere of, you know, being stuck this far underneath, you know, in an ocean of blood.
I mean, that exactly like you said, that was the thing. I was like, so much of this stuff, I'm like, doesn't end up paying off or anything. And, you know, I think a lot of the threads that, I don't know if maybe the game was better at explaining stuff, but like, you know, he's got this like locket thing, or, you know, this picture of
I had
bird.
no idea what that was or what was even in the locket. That's, once again, how dark my theater was. I could see a silhouette of something, but I didn't know what it was.
It was like a bird with like a flower vine or something. Like it was like very like it looked very old and pretty. Like it was some sort of glass, like, you know.
Yeah,
like
it says it's
stained
from a colony, I believe, that he was involved in, and he's to blame for all the deaths on that colony or something, you know.
Which I got the general gist of, because obviously he's like talking to himself and talking to, you know, sometimes real voices, sometimes fake voices, because sometimes the radio's not plugged in, sometimes it is. And this was the part that just kind of really let me down, because I thought I can get with this story of, you know, like the stars and the moons die and all this stuff and this blood moon, but you know, it's stuff like this lock and him talking about he did something. But, like, I was like, none of this pays off because I don't know what they're talking about.
No,
I'm never told what actually happened.
We get these cutbacks to him as a child, and, you know, flashbacks to him as a child, and all these elements as well that I don't know how it all pays off.
Yeah.
And then there's one moment where I said, I'm not sure if this is really necessary for the movie. He just takes off his shirt for a moment to show off that, you know,
Gotta flex
that
a little.
he looks good. He has a six pack. You know, he's been working out. And then there's a cut and he just has his shirt back on. I say, okay, I don't know. Maybe that was cosmic horror as well. Who knows, you know? Maybe he was just left without his shirt on for a moment.
Well, and then like they talked about, or they hinted at something about like something burned into his arms. And then he shows his arms, but I'm like, there's nothing there. It's just like red or like, and then
that's what I thought as well. I was wondering if there was a real explanation for that. I read online that it was
at one time
he was being irradiated, is what they say, by the camera going off all the time.
Okay, but, well but see, this is the thing. I'm like, I had to look up half of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, unfortunately, you know, the one thing is in a movie, you kind of have to have like some basis of a story that like starts and finishes. And I love the abstract, but there should still be some threads there to connect.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I just couldn't connect with it. So I think that really that's where it kind of drops for me, because I feel like with just a little stronger storytelling or threads that I can connect, like maybe, you know, maybe as a viewer, I could have been more in his depression and his anguish, and like then I feel more for him, and I probably wouldn't care about the length as much, because I'm like, oh my god, you know, like I don't know, you know, he killed his kid or his wife or something when he had to do whatever. But he kept talking about like, oh, they made me do, I don't know what the fuck they made him do. He blew something up or they killed a town or something. I don't know. And it's just, it's never explained, and no one's going to explain it. No one on the speaker explains anything. And then I felt like they were giving me really important information at one point on the speaker, and I couldn't hear anything they were saying because the sound effects were mixed way too loud. And they're like, and I was just like, I just gave up, and I'm like, I'm going to vibe out. I think the good thing is I thought vibe wise and look wise, I liked the way it looked, so I could vibe enough with it that I was like, I just like the look of what's going on.
Between both of our screenings, we could have got a better movie where your screen was set correctly.
Yeah.
My audio was set correctly. You know, we could have actually taken in what Markiplier was trying to tell us here. But for me, I before we move on to our next movie for this evening, I just want to mention the point in the movie where it completely lost me. And that's where he comes out of this kind of, you know, consultation with this eldritch being, and he gets back. He seems to be back in contact with the surface. He has, you know, the piece of bone or whatever that he needed on the front of his ship. The movie very much seems at this point that he's going to come up and then they're going to basically take the bone and be like, you know, ha, you'll be down there forever. We don't keep our word. There's no way to take you out anyways. You're welded in there. Something like that. But he winds up volunteering that he found another submarine, and he says like the code on S8 or something. And then they say like, okay, well, you absolutely have to go and get the black box information from that. You know, we were just there 10 minutes ago in the movie. And he says, okay, well, I'll go back, but it's going to be like a half-hour journey. And they're like, yep, you got to be back within a half hour in order to extract. And at that point in the movie, I was like, we are literally returning to a site where we've already been, and we're basically just reconnecting wires or putting in a password or something. Like, he already partially connected to like the onboard computers to some degree, because, you know, he was in some sort of consultation with that other vessel before he left. So it was just like, that was the moment for me where it very much felt very repetitive. Or it should have been when he first met up with that submersible. He discovered the password through some way in the iron lung, and he was able to extract the information himself. And then, you know, you could have the propulsive ending of him, you know, escaping the monster and him consulting with this eldritch being, and then him kind of being snapped back to reality and merging with the ship, and all that stuff would have worked better for me. The fact that we kind of dipped our toe into that, returned, seemed like the movie was ending, and then we had to go back, and, you know, it was telling me there was going to be a half hour left, and I checked and it was actually more like 40 or 45 minutes left, and I was like, you know, that's where I was like, okay, this is tough, because I very much felt like the movie was, you know, about to end as like a small little indie movie, that I was like, okay, this was pretty competent for what it was. I'm happy. Let's leave. And I still had 40 minutes left, you know? So that's, for me, that was tough.
To me, also, the promise, like, you know, one of the first things we learn about at the beginning of the movie is we've got the light meter for the depth and the light meter for the oxygen. And we get down to that last cell. So for like 50 minutes of this movie, we're on one cell of oxygen left. And I'm just waiting. I'm like, obviously, he's going to run out of this oxygen at some point. But then, like we said, then you start doing these time slip things, and then it doesn't matter.
The oxygen refills 1 pip, and it's all the tensions released. And, I agree. For me, it was just, the movie just becomes too convenient. And of course, you can hand wave that and say it's cosmic horror and all this sort of stuff. But it was just, for me, I felt like I was cheated as an audience member. I felt like we were there. We were at the end. Sure, was it the most climactic ending ever? Just, him in a pool of blood looking up at a big monster? No, but also, like, at that point, I was like, this is a little indie movie. Who cares? That's a good ending for what it is, right? So, it just went on too long. And then by the time we got to the parts where you're kind of talking about, where the whole submersible's filling with blood, and the under chamber is completely full of blood.
He loses
he's
an
merging
arm
with the ship. Yeah, his arm gets merged with the ship, and he rips it off, and all this stuff. Conceptually, all cool stuff, of course, especially for a little indie movie, a little indie video game. I understand why that's cool. It's just, it's not cool enough to me to prolong the movie by another 45 minutes. And also, like, once again, when you don't have the full context of what's happening, why is this character being tortured? All these different voices coming at you. It is perhaps one of the most chaotic last 10, 15 minutes of a movie I've seen. And I think a lot of it is just because of some shoddy filmmaking, or, just wanting to leave too much in, or cutting to all these different shots. For a movie that, I wouldn't say it's like beautifully filmed for most of it, but it's very much, it's filmed fine. It looks good for the most part. It like betrays all of that in the end portion, just all shaky cam all over the place. It's all out of focus. I don't know what is happening, and it's all very low light, dimly lit. So yeah, for me, it very much lost me in the last 15 minutes. That I was just like, God, what on earth happened there?
Yeah.
And once again, my screen was so dark that I searched up, and it was like, oh, he pressed the button that lowered the shutter, which then when the monster bit in, the pressure exploded it and exploded him and the monster. I couldn't see any of that. Like, I on my screen, I saw him lower the shutter, and then we cut to like an outside shot to see what happened, and I saw like an explosion or something, but I didn't see what the monster was or what it looked like. It was just all like crimson colored. I was like, okay, cool. He put the black box in the, the life preserver, and, presumably humanity at some point will find that and maybe find a way forward from just sending people in submersibles in this ocean of blood. But yeah, I mean, that's more or less like all I really got to say about it. Like,
Yeah, I'm good to rate it.
Yeah, so if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Iron Lung?
So I can't believe you've done this, but I think you've talked me down.
No, did I? You were so happy in the spoiler-free section.
You know what? No, I'm not gonna let you talk me down. I'm not gonna let you talk me down. I'm gonna give it like a very low yay. I really did enjoy it. The length alone, I really thought about knocking it down to an okay.
It's crazy for someone like you, who I would say 80% of the movies we watch.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. If it's past 90, 95 minutes, you're like, oh my God, cut 20 minutes out of this thing, The
length is rough, but I really, the vibe is so heavy on this, and I really liked it. Like, even though it was long, and even, like I said, there's a lot of repetitive things going on, I was just kind of like, this movie just kind of had me hypnotized the whole time, and I was just like, eyes glued. I just liked what was going on. I liked the cosmic horror. Unfortunately, like we said, for you, your screen was really dark. I liked what I saw once we got into the blood sea and the monster and the eye. I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, and then the music's really helping me. So, you know what? I'm going to be positive. And it's like, it's a very light yay. Like, let's not mistaken this for even a medium yay. It's on that cusp of okay yay, but I will give it that yay. It's competent enough that I'm very interested to see him do something else. And I hope just as weird also. I feel like we got the Philippou brothers, doing that kind of thing. And, we've got the Krager doing his thing and all this stuff. I'd like to see him go into, like, only doing fucking weird shit like this and, carving something out that's kind of his own thing. What about you? What would you give it?
Well, just on that note, I agree that, will Markiplier become a filmmaker now? I don't know if he really has those ambitions. I'm unfamiliar with the dude relatively, right? So this movie's certainly going to do well enough, and he's going to make millions of dollars off this. So,
A24 is going to come a knocking, or Neon.
Who knows? They might at this point, right? Like, I wouldn't be shocked. So I think he should get the rights to another weird little indie horror game.
What about Dredge?
Because I tell you what, oh my God, Dredge. Now that would be a banger. Yeah, let's get Dredge. Markiplier and Dredge, I love it. But yeah, in terms of Iron Lung, I'm going to land on an okay for it, which I'm sure, it's no surprise to anyone who's been listening to me. If this movie was 70 minutes, it would be a yay. And it would be a light yay. The sort of thing where I think it was, relatively well done enough for me that I enjoyed it. It's just that it's not. There's an extra 50 minutes after that point, and it kind of tested my patience, and some of the filmmaking that I admired in the first half kind of let me down in the second half. I still think it should be admired for its distribution. It should be admired for hey, it is still relatively competent for, a movie that is written, directed, produced, starring, and edited by a single dude. It's pretty crazy. And some of the technical aspects that you were mentioning, the cinematography, I wasn't able to see at times, to really admire the visual effects or what they were kind of doing there. Or, I would need to have a closer ear to the score. So maybe if I, reviewed some of that, maybe I'd feel a little bit more favorably. But yeah, overall, relatively impressed by Markiplier's directorial debut. Didn't wow me like a Philippou Brothers or something like that. And I will say that even, that I probably landed on the same review with Shelby Oaks. I will say with Chris Stuckman, there were aspects of the filmmaking that were really impressive in the movie. So, as we discussed numerous times on that episode, you can go listen to our thoughts there. But, yeah, I mean, this was still a fine time at the theater. So yeah, I'm going to land on an okay for it. So with that, let's hop out of our submersible and doggy paddle over to our remote island with Send Help, which was also released on January 30th, 2026, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, considering we're co-hosts on a horror movie podcast, it would be sacrilege if either of us were unfamiliar with Sam Raimi. Of course, the director of the original Evil Dead trilogy and Drag Me to Hell and, for me, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy from the early 2000s. But were you looking forward to what some are calling a return to his roots, a return to form for Sam Raimi with Send Help?
I was curious. I was very curious. I did not know about this movie till pretty late in the game. I just kept getting inundated with the trailers, essentially, and everything I saw. I guess my ear just was not to the street on this one. But obviously, it was nice to see directed by Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi is someone who always has his name as from the producer of Evil Dead. But it's never a directing credit. It's always a producer credit. So I was very curious just what this was going to be like, because I thought the trailer stuff, they gave a gist of what it was going to be about. But with Sam Raimi, you don't know what he's going to do. You never know what he's going to do. And I'll be honest, when I saw the trailer, I was like, is this a horror movie? I was like, I don't really know what's going on. But people were like, oh, yeah. So,
I mean, I called it a survival thriller or island thriller. And we can get into it if it's a horror movie or
what
not.
about you? Were you looking forward to this or?
I will say that this is another one that I wasn't very familiar with coming up until the trailer dropped probably 3 months ago. And similar to yourself, I feel like I've been seeing it in front of everything since, I think probably Begonia, back a couple months ago, whenever that came out. And to tell you the truth, I think it was a really fun trailer. I think it's a good trailer that basically sold what I expected for the movie. I thought even in the trailer, Rachel McAdams kind of shined as, this Clark Kent sort of person where they're like, we're going to put glasses and an oversized blouse on Rachel McAdams and try and make her this awkward woman. And I thought in the trailer, she sold it pretty well. I thought Dylan O'Brien as kind of this white collar douchebag in the trailer, once again, frat boy sort of guy. I thought all that was working well. And then I was like, hell yes, let's see them pit off against each other on a deserted island and see what happens. I had the same reservations as yourself where I was wondering how much of a horror movie this was actually going to be. But if you look at the marketing, I mean, they show a bunch of blood, a bunch of people covered it as a horror movie. And, you know, we'll get into specifics of that. But overall, this was something I was looking forward to. And then as we got closer to release, a lot of the reviews, as I, you know, mentioned, they were calling it like a return to form. They were calling the movie sick and twisted in a lot of regards. They were saying like, hell yes, Sam Raimi is back. Like, you know, the drag me to hell sort of Sam Raimi, who's a little bit more mean-spirited, is back. So I said, okay, well, at least it's not the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness Sam Raimi is back, because, you know, then I'd be worried. So yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to this as like a fun January horror or thriller release. So are we both left sending out a distress signal from our theater? Well, before we get into that, let's throw it on over to the trailer.
From director Sam Raimi.
Mr. Preston?
You're unhappy about not getting the promotion?
Get tickets now
Let's talk it out.
for the most twisted fun
I need somebody who's a people person.
you'll have in the theater.
Somebody who's well-liked. Somebody who golfs. Does that make sense?
We're not in the office anymore, Bradley.
Send Help, rated R. Only in theaters. Get tickets now.
Send Help was directed by Sam Raimi and written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, and the story is as follows. An employee and her insufferable boss become stranded on a deserted island. Here they must overcome past grievances and work together. But will they make it out alive? Now here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. So Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Send Help?
I thought this was interesting. You know, a little bit of, I think it does some cool twists and turns. Sam Raimi, it's definitely, I will say, a little gorier than I thought it was gonna be, for sure. I was a little worried for like 40 minutes of watching this, where I was like, are we sure this isn't gonna be just like some weird
Castaway with a social cause, a social message at the core.
Yeah, and then turn into like some sort of weird meet cute, like romance thing going on. You know, Sam, give him credit. He does his twists, he does his turns. I thought this was fun. You know what it kind of reminded me of? It kind of reminded me of last year with Companion, like something a little lighter. Like something a little lighter, little bloody.
Easily digestible.
Very easily digestible. I thought Rachel McAdams was fantastic in this. I thought Dylan O'Brien was also very good in this.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though, let's be realistic, really they just wanted to cast Adam Brody. That's really what they wanted to do. He's styled as Adam Brody. He pretty much acts like Adam Brody in almost any horror-esque movie he's been in the last like 20 years. Like I'm thinking,
that's a good poll. Why didn't they cast Adam Brody?
It was way there. I was wondering if maybe he was too old, maybe. Although he's about the same age as Rachel McAdams, I would think. Maybe younger.
I feel like the character is supposed to be a little bit younger than Linda Little.
But there's no way. I was like, it's just screaming Adam Brody. I was like,
True.
And like I said, they styled him just like it. You know, I thought it was interesting. I like the kind of teen rom-com, like the very, what was it? Was it like She's All That? Where it's just like Rachel McAdams, they've got like glasses on her and like terrible outfits and stuff.
Glasses, never does her hair. She eats tuna fish sandwiches at her cubicle and leaves it on her face. She's a crazy bird lady at home. She just talks to her bird all by herself. Yeah, I thought she did a good job of playing this too. Like playing this sort of, awkward, nebbish, like number cruncher of a character that basically in any sort of social interaction, she's just very awkward and doesn't really know how to talk to people, is kind of like what you get in a lot of the early conversations in the movie. Yeah. I thought they did a really good job of selling it. I mean, is she ugly as she's, done up that way? No, not really. It's like, if she put on a different outfit and did her hair, it'd be fine. But I did believe it for like the way she was portraying that character, that she would be a little bit of an outcast in this sort of corporate environment.
And she gets her glow up.
Oh, of course. The windswept hair on the island, that waterfall scene, of course. Yeah.
I have like some, personal issues with, I don't know. I always just feel like I'm thinking about, Rachel McAdams, not necessarily, doing tons of movies, in recent memory. And I always think it's interesting, these people that like to join, especially in the last little bit, as horror just becomes like dominant at the box office. I just always think it's interesting, these actors that I'm like, probably would never say yes to a horror movie 10 years ago.
Hang on. She was in Red Eye in 2005.
Oh, yeah, that's
which
right,
is another
she
one
was.
that's kind of in the same vein as this.
Yeah, very, very much so. I think it's interesting when people do this.
You are correct that for the majority of her career, of course, she was not doing horror movies.
And it's like, oh, we gotta, you cool people gotta come crawling back to us. So, it's like the nerds get to be happy for once. But yeah, I thought this was interesting. Had lots of things I didn't like CGI animals.
Are we going to talk about the CGI boar?
Oh.
Is this another bad CGI boar on
Trust
film?
me.
What was it? The Strangers Chapter 2
Chapter 2. The Strangers Chapter 2 might have actually had this one beat. I think
I would love to see these two boars square
face
off.
each other. Yes.
We need a creature feature. Yeah.
But, I did have a problem. I think almost every animal in this was CGI'd. It looked bad, from bugs to boars.
There were some long, drone shots of the island and stuff that looked pretty bad as well. Or, let's say if they're up on a cliff face and the deep background. Very much to me read as that it wasn't filmed on location. I didn't actually check that out, but a lot of it to me seemed like a studio backlot done up as an island for a lot of it. Obviously, you can't do some of the ocean stuff with that, but a lot of it didn't read to me like they were in, I don't know, let's say Hawaii shooting this.
I will say, this does have signature Sam Raimi. It is, as you say, it's very mean-spirited. I always enjoy that he's not necessarily, he doesn't make his characters necessarily all good or all bad, and I like... Usually is mean twists on endings and stuff, which we'll get into. Now, this is where I'm going to say, I think I've seen some discussion on this movie since it came out. I think it's overhyped. I'm just going to say that now. I think, yeah, it's pretty good for something we're seeing in January, but we just talked about Iron Lung that, is, to me, is... I'd much rather watch an Iron Lung than this, something just totally out there and just weird and giving it its all. And I get people are like, oh, this is Sam Raimi. It's an original, horror movie, original idea. And that's all great and dandy, but I'm not sure what the audience for this is. I'm going to tell you the audience of my theater, I was the youngest one there by 20 years.
Oh my God. Same as my theater as well. And I had an old lady sat directly behind me all by herself. And then probably 2 seats to my left, it was an old couple. That was the sort of thing where the older man was talking to his wife the entire movie. And I think he thought he was whispering, and he was just basically at talking volume saying shit the entire time. See Rachel McAdams with tuna sandwich on her face and be like, she's a mess. Or, hear her pleading to her boss about how she wants a job. And he's like, she didn't earn this, very much oh, okay, buddy, you're getting the wrong, message from this movie. But, he thought he was home in the living room, talking, in his wife's hearing aid the entire time.
Yeah, but my audience was essentially, might have been the same women that all attended Where the Crawdads Sing when I accidentally saw that in the theater.
Wow. Nice.
So I just thought it was very interesting because I'll let you know, all my audience had a time. They were loving it. They were laughing. They were talking. And like I said, I thought things were cute. Like I said, I enjoyed some of the twists and turns of this. I don't think it was horror enough for me. The twist it does take, it takes a dark turn, and then obviously it's this cat and mouse game, but there just wasn't enough of that for me at the end of the day. I thought there was way too much going on before the twist. This is the opposite of Iron Lung. I thought there was too much filler at the beginning and not enough, there just wasn't enough at the end to really feed my appetite of horror.
So that's interesting. I'm going to jump in here now.
Yeah.
But for me, it was almost inverted. I enjoyed all the stuff in the beginning. I enjoyed the corporate bullshit. I enjoyed kind of the power dynamics and these characters kind of going back and forth on the island, that inversion of their natural order, in The Office. I really enjoyed that. I thought the performances by Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien, the entire time, were great. Whatever they were doing, of course, we've already hinted at, of course, Sam Raimi likes to paint these characters as a little bit gray and a little bit mean, and are you supposed to like these characters the whole way through? Are you supposed to feel sympathy towards this billionaire? Who the fuck knows? We'll get into it in the spoiler discussion. But as a movie, when I was watching it, I was enjoying a lot of this movie until we get to the third act, which, spoilers, we're watching a horror movie. Obviously, the third act is going to have more gore and, fighting and whatever else is going to happen in a horror movie, right? So for me, I actually thought a lot of this was pretty good as this like deserted island survival thing of will they, won't they, and kind of at each other's throats. I did really like a lot of that. And I thought specifically the explanation as to why this character of Linda Little is such a capable survivor on this deserted island
was funny.
Was a lot of fun, and it was kind of believable for the sort of character we saw, and also like the age range of the person she was portraying. I don't want to say the specifics, but it was really good. I really enjoyed that. And as you said, like, my audience was completely into it.
Yeah.
They were all geriatric, but man, they were squirming, they were squealing, they were urging at a couple of times, like literally on the verge of puking, and to tell you the truth, I was cackling. There was so much in this movie that, a bad CGI boar, man, that makes me laugh. And then a bad CGI boar just, absolutely, duking it out with Rachel McAdams. That's, come on, that's cinema there. I was cackling, and I can't get into some other scenes, but I was definitely enjoying myself. I thought this was a lot of fun.
There was a lot of fun times in this. I will admit that.
Yeah. It's not gory the entire way through, but I do think there's enough shock moments or some practical effect gags in there to satisfy someone who's kind of looking for that. As long as you're not going in expecting it to be like Hostel or something. I mean, it's not that, it's a lot of just these two people on an island playing mental games with one another and, being assholes to each other, more or less. I will say for me, it went on a little bit too long. Not 50 minutes too long like an Iron Lung, but it went on 15, 20 minutes too long. And I think if you were going to kind of have that third act twist, what's revealed there, you could have pulled it up a little bit and maybe cut some other stuff, and it would have been fine to keep this closer to 90 minutes. But yeah, I mean, is it overhyped? Yeah, probably based on what I've been seeing, but I did enjoy it. For what this was the sort of thing that I walked out of the theater and I texted my mom right away and I said, "You're going to love this movie." Her and Carvey are going to eat this up. This is the perfect level of like, my mom will be completely bought into Linda Little's struggle and her story, and Carvey will be entertained because there's enough CGI boar gore. So, he'll be into it. So I think it's a bit of a crowd pleaser, despite being a little bit mean-spirited at times, or a little bit gory, or, schlocky at times. But, yeah, I mean, for me, it worked overall. Did I love it? No, but it's funny for you to be the one who's like riding for Iron Lung, the more, I don't want to say elevated, but the more like slow burn, like this little indie movie. And I'm like, no, Rachel McAdams CGI boar.
You've corrupted me.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. Our dynamic on the show has been flipped on its head.
Yeah, that's right.
For a lot of this, I mean, we need to get into the spoiler discussion. I mean, the pitch of the movie is castaway with an employee and a boss on an island, and to really delve and reveal anything else, it spoils things. I will say that I quickly looked up to see if this was filmed on location, and it was filmed in Los Angeles, but also in Sydney and Thailand. So they must have did some on location filming. I will still stand by when they do a drone shot pulling out from the beach to show the island. It doesn't look like a real island to me. So whether that's digital extension or, painting things out, I don't know. I will still stand by that. For a lot of this movie, it didn't look like a real island to me. But yeah, I mean, I would say this one's fun enough to check out in theaters with like a bucket of popcorn and a few friends. I think you'll have a time. If you can find one of those afternoon screenings full of, old people, you'll probably even have more of a time, because they were like eating this up at my screening. So yeah. What do you say? Should people go see this in theaters?
I think for like our audience, I'd say no. To me, this is a stream, but to me, if you're like looking for something easygoing, like a date night movie, or like you said, you just want to laugh at some old people, have a really good time. You want to hear a bunch of old people's phones go off because they never silence them in the movies. And then they're yapping at their grandkids or something in the middle of the movie, letting them know they're in the movie, what they're watching, who stars in it. Then, it's probably worth going. So it's like a light recommend for me.
All right. So it seems like both of us are going to at least lightly recommend that you check this one out in theaters. And with that, I think it's time to cut to our spoiler discussion for Send Help. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Send Help, so if you've not seen Send Help, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, usually I pass it to you, but I gotta launch right into Survivor. I don't know if you're a Survivor guy. Survivor is like my guilty pleasure reality TV show that I've been watching for years and years and years. And I'm not gonna lie, when you took like Rachel McAdams, who's playing this middle-aged, accounting adjacent character, the fact that she's just obsessed with Survivor and, has been trying to get on the show and has been reading up on all these like survival books and taking solo trips and teaching herself to do everything. I thought it was so fun. And I thought it was just like, hey, this kind of works for this character. Now, do they amp it up a little bit in the movie? Of course. But most movies, I don't think, do a good enough job establishing how like their everyman survives in a situation like this. I thought they did a great job in this. I thought it was a really fun explanation.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. The audition video was super hilarious.
Oh, yeah. It made me wonder, are people actually going all out like that for their audition tapes?
I hope
because there was like editing, there was, just lower thirds.
You gotta offer your services for people auditioning for Survivor.
Yeah, I mean that was a well-cut tape, I'm not gonna lie.
But I thought there's a lot of charming stuff in this. I did love the beginning. They kind of made sure you got the reference to Office Space of like Donovan leaning against the thing, against the cubicle. I thought Donovan was hilarious. He was the funniest thing in this whole movie. Well.
Yeah.
And
Donnie.
Donnie. Just when him and Bradley are like together, it's hilarious. Giving me that like horrible bosses vibe. Maybe Colin Farrell a little funnier, but I thought all of this was like super funny. And see, to me, I think the real issue was like, if this wasn't even a horror movie and it was just kind of this like switching roles once they're on an island type thing, I probably would have liked the movie even more if it just wasn't any sort of like horror thriller at all, and it was more leaning into like comedy with some gross out stuff. To me, I'm just gonna say this, like, my main complaint with this is CGI boars are hilarious, and I 100% agree with that. But this is Sam Raimi. This is like the king of, I have $0, I use all practical effects, and I literally became famous off of like the most iconic horror franchise there is, essentially,
for using low budget practical effects, for sure.
Yeah,
like very creative. Yeah.
And it just hurts my heart that everything, from the first like the plane crashing in half, they do the cheap that scare.
I agree. That looked awful. I didn't think it was harrowing at all. I heard some people saying that, it was so horrific and this was crazy, and, his suspenders getting cut on the side and him, getting scorched on the side of the window. All of that, for me, I thought looked terrible. Like, bottom of the barrel visual effects that, for me, it was just a distracting moment. I almost wish that we got turbulence, it blows out. You see, like, I don't know, Donnie fly out and his face gets ripped off the corner of the plane or something instantly. And then we cut the black and they're just like, floating to the island. Because for me, it was just so prolonged. Even if it was only 2 or 3 minutes, it was too much.
Well, and, this is where I kind of question of who it's aimed at, right? Because like you said, your audience loved it, my audience loved it. Like, to me, this is a horror movie. Like, you could take your mom, if your mom's not like a big horror fan, and you've got anyone in your family that might not be like a big horror person, like, this is something you can probably both go and enjoy. I mean, obviously, you get a gallon of blood when we do get Rachel McAdams fighting a boar. And I thought that was hilarious. I was laughing to death. And I had, there was people, women in my audience are like, oh my God. Like, the woman right in front of me was not happy that there was this much blood in it. She was not prepared for it. But yeah, I mean, that I'm going to be honest, like a lot of my gripe is like just the CGI stuff. I just thought it was kind of lazy for what I would expect from Sam Raimi. Especially when you're trying to do your comeback to horror.
I think that's fair, especially when you're watching this movie with Sam Raimi in mind. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I knew it was directed by him, of course, but for me, it just kind of faded into the background until every now and then I'd see something, and I was like, oh, that's like a Sam Raimi thing, like every now and then. But I wasn't thinking like, oh man, this CGI boar should have been all practical and all this stuff. I didn't really care. Did I think it was great? No, it's terrible. That's why to me it's funny and entertaining. She strikes like an anime pose, jumping off of a tree to like wedge the knife in it or the spear in it, and it's awful. And then it's just running around, and she does like the move of like propping herself up against a log and wedging a spear further in it, and then it's like still alive, so she's stabbing it, and she like rips its eye out. There's just blood going everywhere. I was cackling. It's terrible looking, of course, but I did think it was fun and stupid for the sort of movie that we were in. I guess like that's one of those moments that the plane didn't work for me, because I think they were trying to make it like scary and harrowing and like trying to show like some really like messed up like gore stuff there. But for me, the boar just very much seemed like we're having fun. This is stupid, like this is just, we're gonna make the boar like a last boss or something. It was just, I don't know. It was funny to me.
Well, and I mean, I'll be super specific. Like, to me, I can tell you when the movie turned for me, where I was like, I got real giddy and real excited. So, one of like the standout scenes in this is that she, feeds Bradley, and then she feeds him the octopus, and then does
as a form of revenge.
Yes, as a form of revenge. And then she's going to, he can't move, he can't feel anything, can't talk.
It's an octopus with venom that paralyzes people. Yeah, so he's completely paralyzed, and it is a pretty good bit of acting from Dylan O'Brien. That
fantastic.
Like, he actually does sell that the only thing he can move is his eyes, and every other part of him is completely frozen, locked up.
Fantastic. And so, and she's threatening. She's not threatening. She's like, I'm gonna cut your dick off, essentially. This is like one of the turns where it's like, oh shit, she's like nuts.
For me, I read it as she was gonna take his testicles out. But either way.
Well, yeah. She was gonna neuter him. She's giving the speech about like the cat or whatever. So this is where it turned for me, because obviously he shoots this at an angle that we don't see, that she's actually cutting a rat, and he can't see it because she's basically scaring him, essentially.
Yeah.
But this was my problem, because I got so excited, because I was like, oh shit. Because not only was I just happy that I thought it was going to take this like horrifying turn, but then I'm like, I'm in this theater full of 50-year-olds. And it's kind of like the the thing where I'm like, no one's expecting this was going to turn into, I'm cutting this guy's dick off and we're going to get real serious real quick.
Yeah.
And I was like, this would be like a Sam Raimi thing to do. Just like, turn it up fucking 300 and just go. And then it's the fake out, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a little less, exciting, because I'm like, okay, now it's just going to be like tormenting each other. And not that, as we get further into it, they're not beating up on each other, and it's getting brutal and all that stuff. But I just thought that promise, to me, I thought this would have been a way better movie if it just had that like hard twist where it was like, now we're in a fucking French New Extremity horror movie now.
So I agree that I think she should have done something to...
I thought the leg might come off.
Yeah, so that was for me. I thought the leg, for sure. The trailer hints at the leg coming off. And I thought she was going to take his leg off at some point. Specifically, I thought he was going to venture off towards that area of the island where he's not supposed to go, which obviously it's hiding something. And he was going to slip and like truly like break his leg where it's completely protruding to the point where it makes sense as an explanation of like, I'm just going to amputate it. I thought that's where it was going to go, like amputate from the knee down. And then, you deal with all the other things that come with that, infection and pus and, all the gross aspects of that, right? Cauterizing it. And I was a little bit let down that we didn't get anything quite that gross in the movie. I didn't really want her to take his testicles or his dick off, though. I wasn't there at that point. For me, whenever this movie kind of tiptoed into like sexual tension or kind of, the bartering of like sexual favors.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it was a lot of those scenes. It didn't work for me fully. I did believe that for a lot of the movie, there was this weird tension between them that I was wondering if they were gonna fuck at some point. I think it's just natural. You have two people on an island, especially when they look like Hollywood actors.
Yeah.
Are they gonna seal the deal sort of thing? Especially when, even though Dylan O'Brien's character is married, he's such a complete douchebag, or not married, engaged. He's such a complete douchebag that, he would do that sort of thing. So I didn't want to see that happen. But I did want to see some form of recompense or some form of, you screwed me over so badly, this is what I'm going to do. Kind of like the Misery sort of thing, from Misery where she hobbles him. I wanted to see like something brutal like that actually happen. And we didn't really get that in the movie. I will say you jumped over probably the most audible moment in my screening, which was Dylan O'Brien drugs Rachel McAdams with the berries, and he pulls out a secret raft from the bushes and tries to sail off. And anyways, it doesn't work very well. It's like the third wave. It completely falls apart, and he goes into the ocean and he can't swim and he's drowning, and Rachel McAdams in her poisoned state rescues him. And she full-blown vomits like in Dylan O'Brien's face and mouth like 3 times when she's pulling him from the ocean with the waves washing up. And the old lady behind me like started urging. She was like on the verge of like puking at this.
Yeah,
and
they were all the same in my theater.
I was cracking up. I was just like, this is the Sam Raimi shit to me, that it seems like a little bit demented or a little bit like, this is sick. Why'd you put this in the movie? But also I'm like sickly loving it. Like just a big, like,
that
oh,
was a great part.
This is so gross. But yeah, I will agree that I wanted the movie to get meaner. And the movie does get meaner, but it doesn't really get mean in the right way for me. Like this plot line of the fiance showing up with, her guide who's, native to the area. He knows these waters. He knows this island. This whole like subplot for me, this little diversion, I don't even know if we needed it. I think it was a moment in the movie where they wanted there to be some more gore and like an actual kill. And, it winds up having like the Dark Night of the Soul moment for Rachel McAdams' character where she has a dream and, there's this jump scare of this like ghoul that looks like out of like a Evil Dead or like a, I don't know, whatever that is. It looks kind of like the Crypt Keeper or something. I don't know. It's very strange. But for that, like that moment in the movie didn't really work for me. I didn't like how it all happened, that it was like bringing back the cliff. I didn't like that it was like the rock getting dropped. I wish like if you were going to go that Rachel McAdams is willing to kind of be complicit in killing somebody. I wish it was just a little bit more like she killed these people.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the movie, I think it is kind of flirting with the idea of like the character you're rooting for. Is she actually a good person? Is she a sane person? I don't think it's going so far to say like Bradley's a good guy, but I think it is kind of like she's gone too far and she's crazy on this island. And, I don't know if we're supposed to be fully rooting for her 100%. Even though I think you are still supposed to be rooting for her, of course.
I mean, the main problem with Cliff, too, is that any time, whether her and Dylan O'Brien or her and the fiance and the tour guide or whether, the problem is anytime they're up there, it looks like shit. Like, to me, this was like some of the most egregious. Like, the backgrounds look terrible. You can tell they're just, like, on a stage. I just thought all of that stuff up there looked like garbage. And especially, like, the jungle stuff looked fine to me. Like, when they're in the jungle, they're in the trees, it looks good. But it just looked like garbage. And I just felt like they didn't fully... Like, I get she's keeping them away from that part of the island because obviously boats are coming. But, like, she gives all this warning, oh, the bushes, you can't touch these... But none of that stuff ever comes into play at all. And I was just, like you said, it's like all that stuff you don't really need because they don't really utilize it.
This movie by the third act should have Dylan O'Brien missing a leg from the knee down. He should have stumbled into some messed up bushes, so his face is all like poison ivied and messed up for like, half of his face and all irritable. She should have an eye gouged out from that one fight and, should be beaten up. And this should basically be like nasty, tearing people apart by the end of this movie. And he flirts with a lot of this, like, you know, this fight that I just mentioned where there's like an eye gouge and I think he gets stabbed or something. It's you know, it's not crazy. You know, it all leads to like this kind of mansion reveal that there was just a mansion on the other side of the island, and a lot of the food she was preparing or a lot of the tools she was using, she actually didn't, you know, be a survivor and find all this stuff. She just went to the mansion, found it, and took a lot of this stuff, which is kind of good for explaining how some of these dishes looked like so great. But it was also like, I kind of liked the stupid reality we were in where she was just literally like master chef of this island, you know, preparing fish like sushi and stuff with, you know, special sauces and all this shit. This whole reveal to me of this like mega mansion being on the other side of the island, I like hated it. I really didn't like it at all. And this was the part of the movie I think you were saying that it was kind of ratcheting it up more so towards like horror with them fighting each other and stuff. For me, it was just like I hated that there was a mansion on the island with them. I don't know. I had like a revulsion to it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, terrible. Why did we do this? I don't know why I hated it so bad, but I did.
Well, and to me, I felt like it was one of those things that it's this big reveal, but then after it's like, we're only there for like a couple minutes, really. Like they don't really use it for any other purpose than like she got the knife from there and all this kind of stuff.
They use it for like, she's like the woman in the chair behind the security talking to women and stuff like that. And I like, once again, I hated that too.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. And then, yeah, and I mean, it just gives them more of an arena to fight, I guess. And, you know, the shotgun and all that kind of stuff.
That moment was kind of fine, I thought, where essentially she has Bradley at, you know, gunpoint, and he's confessing her love to her and basically saying that they just want to stay on this island together. And, you know, I wasn't buying it for a second, so I really hope that the character of Linda Little wasn't buying it for a second. But I like that she was smart enough to notice the difference between the two statues in the background, that one was missing the horn, and, you know, I like that little reveal, and obviously the golf club swing transition, like all of that was good. It was just, I don't know, I didn't need it to take place in a mega mansion, I guess, on the other side of the island.
How did you feel about like the actual ending, like her in the golf tournament and then like driving away? And do you like the golf swing transition into her playing the golf? But I don't know what it was. I mean, I feel like it's just a nod to old people because it ends in a very, like, kind of, to me, like an 80s, like John Hughes type ending. If it was a good guy, like just driving away with their pet, you know, they've won everything they wanted in life and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was necessarily a satisfactory ending for me.
The idea of her basically becoming the big business person from this, you know, and coming back and becoming successful and having probably her own company and people she works for and, you know, being wealthy and playing golf and all that stuff. I like that idea. I don't know if I like the one way or another driving off in this fancy car on the coast and then her kind of turning and looking towards the camera, breaking the fourth wall, just like staring at us. Like, I also like don't really 100% get what it is, other than like, maybe we're all, if you pursue that sort of business, you're all going to become a monster. But then again, I'm also like, I don't know if we're supposed to hate her at the end or still be kind of rooting for her in this like girl boss badass way. Like, yeah, you killed him and he deserved it, and now you know, you're winning. But it was just like that whole vibe, you know, and, you know, I'm gonna get you as she's driving off and stuff. Like, it's fun and it's tongue in cheek, but like, it's like the head turn and look at the camera that I don't know what it's supposed to be conveying.
I feel like it's for the casuals. I mean, it's like I said, I just feel like this, we don't have real statistics here, just our stories, but I mean, it's just, to me, the older people love it. It's just like, it's one of those things, like, you know, it's a cute ending. There was laughs in my theater at the ending. Like, the old ladies thought it was funny, and I think that's all it is.
Is it as simple as, like, just watch out, like, someone like this is gonna get you? Like, there's crazy people like this in the world, or, you know, like, you gotta watch out for these social climbing business people, you know, they'll do anything to get ahead. Like, I don't know. It's probably saying some of that. It was just, for me, I thought, specifically the driving part was stupid. I would have been fine with her basically having this is what they should have done, and this would have involved more with Survivor, but it was like golf tournament, launching her book, it's successful, super big lineup, she's signing people, everyone's telling her she's so inspirational. She goes back to her mega mansion and she watches Survivor, and there's a quick clip where she was actually on the show or something stupid like that. Like something like that, where it's like, okay, great, she's on the celebrity version of Survivor or something like that. I would have been fine with. Or she goes home and she's watching a rerun of Survivor and she gets the news that she's going to be on the next season, or just something like that. Less like she's absolutely crazy and I don't know which way you're supposed to feel about her at the end. And I don't know, I don't think the ending I just pitched is great. It's just, for me, it would have been like, okay, just whatever. It's like consistent with the rest of the movie, more or less. So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Send Help?
So I think I'm going to land on an okay with this one. I was pretty lukewarm on it. Like I said, I like the general concept of it. I think for something light and fun, I didn't have a bad time at the theater with this. I'm just a sicko, and I just wish it went into some more sicko ways. And like I said, I just really had a problem with all the CGI. I was hoping that Sam Raimi Return the Horror would involve a lot more practical effects and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it didn't. To me, this is a very good January release. If it came out in the prime months, I probably wouldn't even be as grateful with an okay with it. It's kind of sad to me in a way. To me, Raimi's a name that you think he could deserve to do something real horror-ish and have it come out in prime release months and not necessarily just something in January is a throwaway. Because my only comparison to this in the non-horror world, which is a shame because I do like this movie, is to me this is The Fall Guy or something. I think people are going to love it, but I think it's going to be forgotten halfway through the year. And then people will just be like, oh, remember that Sam Raimi movie that came out in January? It's oh yeah, no one's talking about that anymore. So I'm going to end with an okay on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and we didn't really get into it in the spoiler-filled discussion either. But as a horror movie, this is an okay, for sure, because it's not much of a horror movie. But for me, reviewing it, I'm going to give it a yay. I enjoyed myself. I thought it was basically just what I would call a good movie. It was good. It was enjoyable. It was fun. It was an easy watch. I thought specifically Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien elevated the material they were given. I thought their performances were very good, as in any movie in a year, but specifically for a January horror release. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed some of the gore or puke or, bodily fluids moments. I do agree that I wish it was a little bit meaner in terms of kind of, really taking Bradley down a peg. Not necessarily, emasculating him, but in some way, shape, or form, to really make that ending sequence kind of hit a little bit harder. And I also didn't like the Mega Mansion thing. So yeah, it's not a full-chested yay, but it's just kind of yeah, on Letterboxd, this is a 3.5. Yeah, it was I enjoyed myself. Good movie, I completely agree. Most people will have forgotten this completely by the end of the year. And if you're not following us on our socials already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky, TikTok. If there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Mark, Steven, Dan, Brian, Trevor, James, and James, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Jill, and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, we talked about a couple of movies this evening. Send Help. Neither of us mentioned the score. You like the score in Iron Lung.
Yeah, maybe if there's some Iron Lung that I can get on there. I don't know if Blondie's going to make it on there one way or another. Yeah. But you can see if I add anything at the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link, and there's a button that will take you directly there. We upload scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So follow it. We get it We update it regularly and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not?
And next time on the show, we haven't, I don't think, officially settled on anything yet. I'm leaving town for a couple of weeks, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the gang, see what Jill and Rowan want to review. But I think it's probably looking like maybe The Strangers Chapter 3, Whistle's coming out. I don't know. I wouldn't expect Now Slaying to be gone for too long.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm very interested in Whistle, and we have to finish what's probably going to be hailed as the greatest trilogy of our time, The Strangers.
We need to see if the CGI boar makes a return.
That's right.
And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.